In attendance is Linda Ackerson, Maureen Cole, Claire Kellogg, D.A. Hillebrand, and Laura Ingham. And our first order of business is to approve as public comments, actually. Are there any public comments? Okay, moving on to item 3, approval of the minutes from July. Can we approve with?
I move to approve without any further reading.
Okay.
I wasn't here, so I really can't.
Okay.
Abstain.
Okay. So
We could approve them next time.
we'll bench that and approve it next meeting. All right, which moves us to item number 4, which is the presentation of the building.
All right.
So you guys
Gotta
probably need
switch.
to talk. Well,
We could go sit in the audience.
you could, but you could also.
Click it over.
So whatever you want to do.
All right.
Okay.
You can see all the images, right?
Yes,
Right.
all set.
Okay, cool.
Personal monitor.
Could you guys just
In
introduce
case we're
yourself?
suspiciously thinking you're not looking at the.
They're playing solitaire.
Awesome. Great. Do you have anything you want to say, Mo, in advance?
No, I just want to introduce our architects, Sid Scott and Joan Jasper, and we're at the beginning of the design process, so we have some stuff for you to see, and we really are soliciting comments before we go to other groups.
Can I suggest that we also introduce Charlie?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure
I'm
the
sorry.
board's met Charlie.
Oh, is that right?
Charlie Baldwin, I work
This-
for Shields Oates Johnson, and
Okay.
I'm project manager.
Great.
assisting Mo.
The amazing project manager who's doing a lot of work, and Karen
you.
Martini.
Thank you.
And Brian is on the building committee.
Great.
Oh. And he's also lives in the McLaughlin neighborhood. Yeah.
Lots of connections.
Yes,
Excellent.
all kinds of connections, yeah. Great, thank you, DA. How rude of me.
Oh,
Thanks, Mo. So I'm Sid Scott, Scott Edwards Architecture.
Joan Jasper.
Yep.
And so what we wanted to do tonight is really treat this as a workshop. We've got a bunch of ideas to talk about tonight, and it really is more about talking about the ideas. We're not at the point of talking about the specific design of the building in terms of what style it is and that sort of thing. It's really more of an idea of how the building will address the existing library as well as how it sits in the park. So those are the big components. And so, looking at the park itself, it's basically zoned with the canopy on one side. We've got the active play area on the other side. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see that up there, can you?
Don't point it in his eye either.
I was not going to point it at anybody. And then we've got more of an open space on the back side of the building. But we've
You have to
also
use
got
your
the-
mouse if you're going to do that. Otherwise, you guys might want to sit over here.
Why don't we go out there?
You want to just bring the chairs up? It'd be great just to sit in a circle.
We
right
might
here.
get yelled at by Renee if we can't record very well. That's the only thing.
And then we move back.
Mm-hmm.
Come on up.
Oh, yeah, that would be good. Those would be perfect. That'd be great.
Close enough that's okay.
You're okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that'd be great. Make sure your red light is on.
Everybody's mics on?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
All right.
So, looking at the park, we've got the zones of the canopy here. We've got the play area here, and really kind of a nice open space behind the existing library. We've got a pretty decent slope that goes up to Jefferson on this side, and right now it's pretty symmetrical about an entry about the existing library here. So what we want to talk about tonight is ideas on how and where we attach to the Carnegie, how we would add on to the Carnegie, and then also how we use the existing library. And really that comes starting with the idea about should the entry to the library be through the Carnegie? Because the things that we now know as we've started the research process, This building was partially seismically upgraded in 2000. It is not seismically upgraded to current code. And so one of the things that we're looking at is if we start modifying the building, interior walls, exterior walls, there will be some requirement to bring the building up to current seismic code, which will be a cost factor in there, as well as rehabbing the existing building in terms of putting a new roof on it and those kind of things to be able to seismically upgrade it. We'd have to put in plywood sheathing for the roof, and the exterior walls, we would have to pull all the existing interior wall surfaces off and redo all of that. So it turns into a bigger project in terms of seismically upgrading the building. So certainly can be done, but it is a cost factor. And when you look at the existing building, it's basically 2 big rooms inside now, divided by the wall that has the fireplace in it. And when we started to look at what we could do in that building without seismically upgrading anything, it'd be very small openings. Like we could only put like a 3-foot wide opening in the wall between the front and the back room. And if we're really using that as an entry to the library, is that going to work? So those are just some of the things that we've been learning along the way about the building. Is there anything else, Joan?
No, I mean, we've been talking a lot, kind of analyzing the building from a historic standpoint and how it sits on the site. And again, if you put the main entry, through the existing entry, then you have to ramp up, which kind of destroys or, kind of mitigates the base of the building because you're bringing grade up. Ramp, I think we have to have, because it's up about 4 feet, so we're almost 60 feet of ramp. So, it's a good amount. So those are,
Those are some of the knowns about the building.
And we've also looked at the site and worked with Parks Department, with the existing tree assessment, which trees are elms, which are diseased, which are not, those kinds of things. So a lot of these footprints take into account that, as well as looking at kind of soils. We think that there's a pretty good bench of basalt right here because the lower level of the Carnegie as it steps up. So we're doing some geotechnical research to find out, how difficult it will be, because even if we go off at the same level as the Carnegie, we'll be into this corner, a good 6 to 8 feet. So we're looking at those things. But also just trying to understand, how people use it, how attached they are to this, to the spray park, which sections they use. We've asked through the different outreach which sections they like better, how they use it, that kind of thing. So traffic flow, parking, we've kind of looked at all of that, to kind of start informing how we look at developing the park with the library on it.
So what we're going to be showing is just a bunch of ideas tonight. And so I don't want to worry about what the building looks like so much in terms of its style, but where it's located and how it relates to the park, how it relates to the existing library. Any questions so far? Okay. You'll have some questions soon.
And we would love a good, frank response. I mean, we're really looking for input. So this is option 1A. 1A is looking at keeping the entry at the Carnegie, off of John Adams, the west side. 1B is really starting to develop some plaza, some connection to the spray park, maybe different paving, as well as saving or highlighting some of the major trees. And this is looking at a 2-story, which probably doesn't work the best for the library, but takes up the least amount of footprint on the park. And so so the lower line is the first level, and then the dash line is the second level. So this is kind of the traditional tiered, where it's got the base, the middle, and the top.
And so from a programming standpoint, one of the things when we go to a 2-story library is that it limits you somewhat programmatically. Today's library, I mean, you can't be flexible enough in designing. So the two-story will limit somewhat that. It also will require either we get additional square footage or we lose some square footage for circulation, vertical circulation, stairs and elevators and those kinds of things. And then there would be the staffing it if you're on multiple levels, that kind of thing. On the good side, I mean, it is a smaller footprint in the park. So, there's a definite positive in that relationship. And one of the things we want to do as we go through these, we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the pros and cons of these so that we can use this as we start to shape each of these ideas.
And I think probably consistent in all the schemes, and we've looked, kind of earlier, we've done a whole bunch of just figure ground, kind of what if, it's long, skinny, short, fat, that kind of thing, or if it hugs the Carnegie, and kind of going through and looking at the requirements for this building being on the National Register. Almost all of these pull away and try to give room behind the Carnegie, so that you'll see, a gap, a gap between the existing building and the new building, instead of it coming and hugging. I think we have only one that really does that. So this is kind of, probably the most reverential, I guess, respectful to the park, and maybe the least friendly to the library in terms of it's a two-story, and just harder to staff.
Part of being on the National Historical Register, the guidelines for that is the additions. Well, one is that it needs to be a subservient addition, is what the language is.
Subordinate.
What's that?
I thought it was subordinate.
Subordinate. What did I say?
Subservient.
Nice.
Which was better than when Joan
We're
had
having trouble with
Yeah.
S words. That's
We're
okay.
having trouble with S words. But the idea being that it does not detract from the original building. And so by that, it's, it shouldn't appear bigger, those kind of things. So when we go to two-story, it is, somewhat bigger. So what we want to do is just talk about, again, like the pros and cons. I thought we'd do is we can go through all of these. You can ask questions as we go, and then if not, we'll just back up and go back to the first one and walk through them again.
I have a question of the
Yeah.
trees. Is this canopy what you suspect will stay this amount?
The
What we're
trees,
looking
our understanding is that the elms at some point are going to die. And,
Well, so that we would have less
so-
than what we're looking at?
Yeah, and the idea would be they could be replaced with, large trees.
So we've talked about doing heritage trees and certain trees, the larger trees that go down, and then just a program to kind of replace the canopy as it, as the elms kind of deteriorate. But so it's kind of a managed program.
But these are where the trees are.
So when the new library would be built, we would not see that this new library, for example, with no trees.
Right.
Right.
So the canopy part of depending on where you decide to build it, but, the idea is to maintain the canopy on this side.
Yeah. So
And we've also got a large tree that's on 6th as
Sixth
well
and
that, depending on the option, could, remain there. The trees that are along Jefferson, there is a big one that's right on the back side.
right there.
Right.
But it's, it's going to be very difficult to build on the back side of the building and not take that tree out because of the root structure, the canopy of the tree, building within the canopy, that kind of thing.
And this two-story, it could be square, could be more squat, but we really tried to focus all the buildings kind of being a building in the park, not an urban building, not street forward, so that you still try to maintain kind of the green side of all sides. So this one we've slenderized a little bit. And our next step, especially with input, will then be to see how these lay out, from a library standpoint, and looking at the pros and cons. But
The other part I just wanted to mention, this really shows the walls of that existing building. So when we get into seismic work on the building and we want to affect these walls, then we are going to be looking at seismic work inside the building. in some form or other. So again, as Joan was saying, we really looked at how to, making a soft touch to the existing building. So the idea with anything we're showing, it would be very glassy and very soft in terms of its connection.
Does the amount of seismic work depend upon what the use will be, how the library uses that work?
Not on the use, it will be more impacted by how much you want to alter it. So, and that's what we'll have to determine is how many of the walls, what happens is the walls are structural inside the building. So when we alter those, there'll have to be something done in terms of seismic work on it.
And this little scene here is just really showing, kind of setting up that plaza area,
So as a
You know.
possible idea of creating a new entry.
right? And we've got some that are more developed than other ones, but you could actually get a drop off on 6th, whether it's a book drop or it's, loading, loading and unloading if you've got strollers.
Handicap
that kind of
parking.
thing. Yep.
Mhm.
So with this one, with the plaza, with an entry over there, you don't have the ramp in the front, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, anything if, and there would be, I'm not sure how we would do it, but if you go back to the last one, Joan,
Uh-huh.
where the front, you can see the ramp. And in this concept, we're saying, coming in from both sides symmetrically, but we would need to come up with some way to get a ramp up to that front entry.
So yeah, if that's the main entry, then that has to be ADA accessible.
Correct.
If we add another entry in a place that makes sense,
Yeah.
that's visible from the front, more or less,
Yeah,
then we can keep this one the way it's,
right.
Have 2 entries.
have 2 entries.
That or use this as a special deal or I don't some other idea where we wouldn't have to put a ramp out front. It's interesting how ramping that up, because the building has a very strong base water table line. And when you start covering that up with the ramp, it changes the proportions of the building pretty dramatically.
So, Sid, if,
Yeah.
if we were to use because I was kind of thinking about when you were just showing that, but a new entry off to the side of that
Mm-hmm.
would go into kind of the new portion of the building.
Right.
We could avoid all the seismic conditions.
Exactly.
Okay. That's the good part. The
Yeah.
other part is if we do the drop off and the handicap parking on 6th, that takes away quite a few of the parking spots,
Mm-hmm.
which are at a
It's a premium.
premium.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we've gotten that far to address that, but that's
Right.
kind of thing.
Well, those are the good pros and cons kind of things that we want to talk about with it.
I don't mind that idea, having that main new entry on the side of that, because that's
Mhm.
where everybody's coming from probably anyway.
Mhm.
And if if the front entry was, because you could actually close off the Carnegie if it was going to be used for something by itself and the library
Mhm.
was closed.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually use the Carnegie for an event of some kind.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea would be, and we'll develop this further, but if the entry was over here, this could be its own special space, or
Yeah,
that kind of
and
idea.
course,
Still
that's,
need-
that's a problem too.
You still need ADA accessibility.
We will, but we wouldn't be
At
the
some
prime.
level.
Oh yeah. It would come, in this case,
We could do off the-
access is through here or up the side, or
Yeah.
somewhere other than just in the front. So that would be the point of that.
I would just like to point out that like the way this is now, you see the back wall of the existing Carnegie? Yeah. So it's very, very closed off, which allows it to be closed off potentially. There's absolutely no sight lines into the other building, none whatsoever. There's no connection whatsoever.
Going this way.
I don't recommend that at all,
Mm.
personally. I don't
I
think
th-
that
I
makes
think
for a
that-
good flow. I mean,
I think in almost any instance, we're going to have to do something.
Yeah.
You
yeah, we're
know?
gonna have to
Open
open
it
up
up.
something back there.
But the cool thing, I think would be a cool thing is if we could do this really glassy, having that outside, the old outside wall, now it's inside and you can experience that and, go through it. That's a nice connection to it.
All right.
Can I
Okay.
add that this is kind of the starting point that we left off with before
Yes.
the bond measure, when we saw the first architectural renderings
Mhm.
helping us define what a library was even going to be like.
Right.
And this was kind of the big idea, the one that people went for out of the three things that they had talked about back then. So that's what
Thank you,
Sid's really
DA.
starting with.
And so we wanted to start with this, and then, the idea with that initial concept was that you would enter through the Carnegie, and so we wanted to look at, well, what if you created a new entry and did something differently with the existing building? Okay. So let's cruise on to the next one.
So 1C again it's 2-story. It's a little bit of it's a 9,000 lower with a 6,000, so almost like a penthouse. With the second floor, really this line right there is the second floor. That's the wall of the second floor. So it's pushing even further away from the Carnegie again, to not be imposing, not to be subservient, but to be subordinate, not insubordinate, but subordinate.
I like the end.
So again, with the main entry here, and you walk through a big kind of covered area. So again, very slender, trying to be, just kind of really hold back. We've kind of got these views set up, but to really kind of take the mass that a second story would have, and really try to, if the more you move it back, the less impact it has on the Carnegie itself. So we're really trying to preserve the scale of the Carnegie.
The other thing this one does is we realized if you did, like in the first option, and it's just all glass, from that second floor you're looking out over the top of the existing Carnegie, so you're looking at rooftop equipment and the stuff that's just going to be out there.
Right.
So what we thought with this one is to actually create a green space at the second floor. So it's an extension of bringing the park up to the second floor, and gives you this kind of green space, instead of just looking out on top of this. And as Joan mentioned, by stepping it back, it's not quite as dominant over the existing building.
Again, keeping the splash pad, and it also, what it does do though, is give some very nice kind of height and scale on Jeff. Because you can see here, that's the floor line of the second floor, and it's just about 6 feet up from kind of the high point on the sidewalk. So here you'd be walking down, you get to look into the stacks. It'd be all lit up at night, kind of be a lantern, which would be really, really nice.
So the windows are going between floors.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you might even hold the floor back a little bit, so you get a 2-story space, and you could kind of see all the activity.
Yeah. The idea would be to really reflecting that it is a 2-story building, whether we do it in punched windows or strip window, whatever it is, but that idea that we've got a connection of the 2 floors together. Because I think it's going to be real important if we go the 2-story route is to have internal connection as well, some kind of an opening that connects the floors together, so that you have this sense of the second floor, and some kind, it would be a feature in the building.
And I really like that idea if we go 2-story. I mean, I think that's really, really important. Unfortunately, of course, then that's wasted space in that respect. I mean, visually it's not, but practically it is.
Right. It takes more space to do that.
So could that, the green space on the overlooking the Carnegie, could that actually be opened up to where you could actually go out onto that? So you have an outdoor area to go out and read, possibly too.
That would be really cool to do that.
Yeah, that's when you go down to those concerts and stuff, and it gets to be about 7, 8 o'clock at night. That is really a nice space down there, especially in that canopy and stuff. So if that could actually be opened up to that, like you could walk out into that green space.
You
Nice
might
idea.
in this area, very similar to the Vancouver Library. I don't know if you'd want to go out here, because then you start dealing with railings and all that kind of
just
good
think about that
stuff.
small space where
Yeah.
you got the trees there.
That's what I thought of when you did that. It does look like the Vancouver Library.
It'd be a nice way to soften the view out over the existing building, because otherwise you're looking at roofing and vents, and it's not the
right.
best view. Okay, so that was another of the 2-story option ideas.
Then we started a lot of discussion in the office that we've been talking about is symmetry versus asymmetry, or kind of asymmetrical balance. And so this one again, just kind of we were trying to say this tree, and this tree, and so we really just bent the diagram around. These are all oaks. They're all healthy plants, and you know, it's just another way to look at it. And you bend around, you know, the spray park, and this one gives a lot of room, you
For the
know,
connection.
to the Carnegie. Yep, to the connection, and then a definite entry off of 6th.
The other thing this one does, which is kind of a cool thing you'll see in the model, but it really would push you out into the canopy of the trees, which is, I think, could be kind of a cool thing.
So it really kind of acts as a backdrop or a screen, and it looks, I think, you know, if in refinement, right now this is at the level of the Carnegie. I think it would be interesting to look at lowering it a little bit, and then maybe having, you know, maybe the transition to the Carnegie would be like a amphitheater seating style, you know, where people could just sit down, look at books. It could be a marketplace. So you could really kind of integrate the levels, you know, with stairs, ramps, and kind of different features.
Which could be a neat thing in relationship to the existing building.
So,
and a
yeah.
little more of, again, that subordinate feeling to it.
And so even though it's got a pretty strong plan shape, I think it actually would act as a really lovely backdrop, especially if it was in similar materials.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. With so much wall surface, what is the thought of color? And I mean, because the brick is so unique.
Yeah.
So what is the thought?
You know, I mean, in this particular one, I mean, you know, in this Carnegie, you know, it's not like it has a lot of, you know, tooled or sculpted stone. It's all brick. You know, the base is brick. It's not a highly refined,
Right.
you know, classical. So here I would think we would use maybe a complementary to darker brick, so that it really, you know, in the shade of the canopy could almost go away. You know, it faces west, so you have, you know, windows. You definitely want to see, you know, to the west, but you would have maybe less window than on the back, you know, where you've got east exposure, you know, and again, you really kind of want to maybe activate Jefferson, you know, and pull people around to the entry. You would have more, you know, kind of your bigger glassy kind of entry.
Sir, we aren't talking about a basement level. We can't do that on any of them. Is that right?
Hold on there.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll get there. Just hang on.
We do, yes, we can. I mean, and there's pluses and minuses. So this one, this line right here, this could go down easily another 4 feet, where it would sit lower than the main Carnegie, but could open up nicely to the Carnegie on both sides. And then this is just really kind of just a window, you know, you want to just be a window in the park, you know, and so you'd probably, you know, again, these are very sketchy, you know, we'd have windows here, but you get an advantage of having solid where you don't really want it, you know, where you don't really want the view. You know, and then again, we've been looking at all of these as they relate kind of to the view as you're driving up 7th, you know, which really seem to really want to preserve the canopy. And so here you're just seeing it kind of peek out. So that's kind of the end of the 2 stories.
Yeah, let's go to 1 story.
All right. So we're calling this one, this is a 1 story. It's 14,500, and we can expand it a little bit to get to the 15. But this is pretty much, we have 2 schemes, 3A and 3B, that are essentially, again, the bar. You know, instead of it being a 2-story bar, it's a 1-story bar. And we're a little snugger, you know, to the Carnegie because we have a little less sight room. We're looking at a 6th Street entrance here, kind of holding off from the spray park, trying to give distance, you know, so you don't have kids coming in all wet, that kind of thing. And And these shaded areas here, the idea for this one is to keep it really, really low, kind of a trellis and canopy, and then really integrate it into the park with selective use of green roof. All right?
This would be what I would consider kind of a non-building idea, which is we would use glass that would reflect the park, would reflect the play areas, so that it's really just becomes a reflection of the park. And with this one and any of these, you could still keep the same idea. If you wanted to enter through the existing library, you could do that and make these work. We're showing creating a new entry, which really engages with the splash area and all. But the idea with this would be, ultimately it's just like a green building. We even thought about ideas of green walls and do a green roof, and so that it becomes a non-building essentially, and it would reflect both the park and the existing library.
And so this is very low. It kind of picks up in between the window head and frieze level, so it's very subordinate, kind of open. There'd be solid areas where you have entry, but then over here, and as it goes north, it really just becomes open, and you have these wonderful kind of courtyard gardens, kind of foreground, so that kind of helps to, kind of keep it kind of hidden in the trees. Kind of concept, and you can see it here, like the symmetry carries through, but again, these would be these exquisite little gardens right up against the window, keep the west sun out, and really kind of filter your view.
I guess it would be kind of blurring the line of the park. You make it feel like the landscaping is coming right inside the building, kind of idea.
But it's probably not only that, but the correlation between the children's area is kind of part of that building now.
Right, it is. It's fully engaged.
That's really cool, because I think we think libraries now, we're thinking kids, and that there's a really nice communication between the two there for that.
Yeah, so that's a good point. But that was the idea is to fully engage with that area, and then up on the corner of Jefferson and 7th.
This is the back area again. That trellis just carries right through, and then this area would be green roof right in here. And then where we have that grade issue, so again, maybe light well, more, window there. But then at the end, this would be, we're calling this the tree house. So kind of the fenestration is kind of emulating the tree trunks and this and that. And so you're in this area that's really sunken and doesn't necessarily have a lot of, vision. You really kind of create this iconic corner, keeps people off the roof, which Park Department really wants us to do. And, you just can have,
this could
some
become,
fun.
Could be the green wall, like a living wall.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful example, just, across the street at the cafe.
Yeah.
So lots of great examples of that. But this idea would be, how do we make a non-building in the park so that it feels a little pavilion-ish, but just really reflective of what's there, the canopy. I mean, I would even probably think in this, we could go to some reflective glass in parts of it so that you get this cool reflection of the park, and then the next ones are clear so you see into the library. So it would create this very rich texture to the outside of the building.
So I'm just going to go back to this scene so you can kind of see the scale.
Yeah, and
right?
and just you'll notice like the difference between this and the 2-story, how it feels when you swing around, as to the size of it.
And Mo, I think you really would really go after the 1-story element if you could, right?
In a perfect world, the 1-story would work best now and in the future.
Okay.
And I mean, we do really need to think about the future and the ability for this space to be adaptable. And 1-story is just going to be more adaptable.
And one thing with this too, adaptable might not be the best for the park, but you could actually grow the building. It could be phased.
Future expansion.
Future expansion if
you
it
could
needed to
add,
get bigger.
Yeah.
So where the entry is off on the right there, the main entry, so the original Carnegie Is it a exit or, what?
Mm-hmm. Well, and all of these, again, it could still be the entry. All these would work if you kept the existing library as the entry.
What do you think about that, Mo, more than one?
Well, it would be fine to have more than one entry. You just have to set up your staffing appropriately. I mean, we have more than one entry now. You know what I mean?
We've
We're
seen
used to
some
that.
great examples of taking like the Carnegie, and the cool thing about yours is the proportions are just wonderful inside, like it to be a fabulous reading room or something very special. So it might be that you don't enter through there. It's it just is used for special purpose or whatever it is, and the entry is somewhere else. But you could still use those as an exit.
And it could be, it could be the quiet zone, it could be nonfiction, it could be the history, it could be a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So again, kind of the same footprint. This one's a little bit skinnier, a little less square footage, just trying to give it maybe a little more room on Jeff, that idea of building in the park. Those things all kind of mush and grow and shrink as we get more into the planning of them. I don't need update. So again, this one bites into the canopy a little bit. So there's pros and cons of each. And then this one is kind of just, it takes, it's got a very simple plan, and it's just a very simple kind of extrusion of glass and overhang on the front. A little, about a little bit taller than the Carnegie. Whoops, sorry about that. Church always gets in the way. Small, kind of connection here, but full height glass, and then a very, very simple bar on the back. Where again, that roof form kind of penetrates. So this one's got a lot of volume, one story, but it's a taller volume.
Space.
All right.
So the advantage to the taller space then doesn't really come into the function of the library, but more just how it feels when you're inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Have that height,
Mm-hmm.
and just maybe architecturally more interesting from
Right.
the exterior, maybe.
Right. I'd
Yeah.
say the kind of pavilion scheme has ample height. This one again is just, it's a little more grand. It helps us kind of keep that. It's just a different approach to how it relates to the Carnegie.
And it's a different along Jefferson. This will give you more visibility, by going taller.
So there you are.
I like these one-story ones, although, boy, they just look so much like elementary schools to me.
Yeah, and that's partly we haven't developed the architecture part of it yet. These could look very historical or, whatever the case is.
When we go back through them, we might be able to. Might as well, don't you think?
What's that?
Do the architectural. We've got these kind of in sketch form, but they're also hardline too, and we're trying to get input, so it might be good. But so here it is, and I think that's. It's not. I think that's like 20 feet, and for a one-story building, that's about the scale. To really bring it down, like below the Carnegie, below the frieze, that's about 12, 13. So it's feet. So then again, just kind of looking at it, from 7th. All right. Then this is option 4, and we call this the wrap. So it's kind of taking the bar, but really trying to, really preserve that canopy, kind of finding an imaginary line about right here, which is where that big canopy stops. And just having a small projection. So again, maybe a very special room, kind of out in the trees. We're wrapping around, not coming forward into the primary mass of the Carnegie, but we are moving forward. And then we're actually engaging, with the Carnegie a lot closer, so that we can get the footprint but slide it further east. And again, the entry here, courtyard here to kind of still relieve that view. And then maybe this idea of bringing a little piece of the park into the building, like an internal courtyard. And so this is the view from 6th. And this one we've, again, kind of a cross between pavilion, really just kind of glassy. This, that could be the meeting room, it could be the children's, that kind of thing. Good covered entry here. And you can see the little courtyard in here, and then how it meets. And this one's right at the same height as the Carnegie. So again, a little bit of that elementary school on the back. And I think once we get mullions and materials and stuff like that, that will help a lot. And then again, here you can just see, like, this is a little pavilion kind of set in to that area with a special little garden, which could be pretty cool. So whether that's media or newspaper or just quiet, you're really just totally engaged in the park. And then you'll
lots
see
of opportunity with that one.
All right.
Can you go back to the other side?
Yeah. So many buttons.
This one with the idea with the wrap, though, if you look at it in plan, and we're just showing it as some kind of glass thing. That could be a brick wall. It could be anything, but the idea that it's starting to set up a proportion that is similar to the existing library. So it could reflect the existing library. It could be something very different, but proportionately, we're starting to get something that is similar there.
I think it has a nice balanced feel. So again, there's a couple of them that we have that are asymmetrical but balanced. And I think when you're dealing with kind of the neoclassical, you don't want it to look like, if you keep it all to one side, then you're going, where's the other wing, kind of thing. So, and then maybe if you're, and then kind of this way.
And with that one, it loses some relationship to the park that's kitty corner from the top park, which for families who use the spring park and the larger park, there's a sight line right now
That's
exists. True. And with this, you would lose that, and that may not be important, but I think it would shift how the spray park's used, and I think it would shift the usage of that corner park.
Yeah, because the other ones have a much lighter,
Yes.
they just sit back there. Good point.
The park that's off to the right, top right,
Uh-huh.
across the streets there. Okay.
It's also, I guess I've been constantly, it's that the building across the street is so close to the corner as well, too. I mean,
This one right here by the church.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if that didn't exist and looked like the way it originally looked, I'd probably have a different response. But that one
It
just
feels
so
real
tucked
tight.
on the corner
Yeah,
a little
feels
bit,
tight.
but it may not, if that's, I think that's my only real concern with this particular
Okay.
one.
Isn't that consistent with urban planning? Put everything out, property lines, fill in all the branches.
It is
And
the
do it
way
on
that
that side where it's, I don't know. I mean,
It is, and so I think you can make the argument that the south side of 6 is probably one of your denser streets with the church and the addition. With this building, we are trying to hold it kind of in the park, so not to have that kind of front, but to get the square footage and hold this.
Yeah,
we're
I think
really
all of them. We heard a lot from folks that the canopy was a big deal. So we've really been trying to respect that and then work with that as much as possible. And then the spray parks was a big deal. Now the deal with the spray park is we could move it. I mean, it could be physically moved.
In all the schemes,
Right.
the slide and swing is gone, you know, in almost all
Which
of
makes
that.
the other part more important.
Mhm.
Well, what
But-
about not having a spray park and having which is
fountain.
more popular, the playground or the spray park?
Apparently,
Oh,
spray
the
park is-
Now, the thing I look at the spray park, and it's awesome for the summertime, but in the winter, it's, you know, you have a big,
Big waste of
big,
space.
big, you know, circle of
Not if
concrete.
you're 4 and you can walk along the ledge.
Nope,
5,000
that's true.
times around.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It gets used
Yeah.
differently.
That's a good point, though.
But that may be something, you know, maybe it could be even enhanced more. I don't know.
I think
who knows,
enhancement
you know.
would make, you could
Mhm.
make it more multi-season.
But we've definitely heard that is a big deal. So we're, you know, trying to respect as much of that as we can with all of these options.
And I think in all these options, any one of them, you know, probably, you know, like the plaza or the courtyard, so that's the least developed, you know, because it's still figure ground kind of
Mhm.
massing. You know, so these are diagrammatic. All right,
Okay,
ready
on to
to
the
move?
next one.
Got one more, guys. Believe it or not. Okay, so this one kind of came out. We call this the submarine, and we said, well, nobody, everybody loves the Carnegie and everybody loves the park, so let's just put the library underground. So we put it underground. We have a new water feature, and just for kind of concept, we've shown it very similar to the spray park because this would have the least impact visually on the park. So we've taken 15,000 plus, put it underground, and created kind of a lantern to enter the library. And then having opportunities like here and maybe other arcs in here that would be kind of skylights or monitors into the library below.
And then it would connect to the Carnegie through underground.
Underground
So
here.
you come into the lower level. So we thought this is if you were going to do the least impact on the park, this would probably be it.
So you'd maybe come through lower level here, and you might have a 2-story space in here that would lift you up into Carnegie. So you could have the children's there, the teens. So as you can see from 6th, where's the library? It's just, the new spray park. And then here's the lantern. That goes down. Oops, sorry.
That church.
Church.
Just
That
have
you
to take that out
go
of the model.
down in here.
It's very Louvre-like.
Mm-hmm. It is. And, we'd end up with probably all sorts of lanterns in the park that would be light for the space below. But what's interesting is actually something you could do. This would be a
Have you
doable
seen
idea.
something like this before?
Well, the Louvre, there's been a
Louvre
lot
is
of
very much like
additions
this.
to very famous buildings that are all underground.
Part of the law library at University of Michigan's underground as
Mhm.
well.
University San Diego, UC San Diego, same thing. They had a very iconic library, and they went
Understood.
underground with the giant expansion of it.
I guess my 2 questions with this is earthquake
Mhm.
wise. I mean, that doesn't
The
matter.
best.
Yeah,
The
actually,
best.
quite good.
Nothing to fall
I
Quite
didn't
good.
grow up in earthquake country, so the whole thing scares me. And secondly, cost for something like this, is this significantly more?
I don't, we haven't
We don't
got
know.
that far to
Okay.
think about that, but I would say
Okay.
probably not, because you're basically building a large basement. And the question would be, how much basalt are we going to hit to do something like this? But we really want to look at it as an idea, because it is pretty dramatic what it does when you look at the other options.
How do you handle lighting then?
Yeah.
I mean,
What
There's the
what does
question.
it feel like down there?
Yeah.
I think it could be wonderful, actually, with using lanterns. I mean, it would just be different. I mean,
Well, would
it
it
would
be like an all enclosed room like? what
be
we
like
have
this, but
here?
you would have windows.
This would be a giant,
Upward.
like this is a giant skylight, right here.
Oh.
See, that's all down below. So that's a big light monitor, right? And then, you know, this is probably one of our least developed, but like here,
Oh, I
like this
see.
is a new spray park, but then this would maybe
All
lift up and be
glass.
an amphitheater, and that'd just be a clear story. So you'd look up and you'd see the trees, and then we could have kind of sculptural ones out in the park, you know, that
bring
would
the
allow
light.
light in. It's not like having a big wall, you know, a big wall of windows.
But it would just take a different, you know, it's taking a different approach to it, which is very subordinate. I used the right word this time. Very subordinate.
Very
Good
subordinate.
job.
And it could be very interesting. And there are lots of examples of this kind of idea.
So here you'd probably put your money into the plaza, you know, to really.
And it'd
develop
be
the
things
plaza.
like, well, let's enhance the park instead of removing space from the park. You're actually providing more amenity within the park.
And your space that you build could be really flexible. I mean, it would provide you with a ton of space.
Oh, it's just a big
It would
rectangle.
just be like one big basement, you know?
Incredibly
How would the-
flexible layout.
What would the relationship be? How would it work with the Carnegie?
So we're really seeing
I
that
know
we
you
would
said-
tunnel underneath and just
Okay.
connect to that lower floor.
But what would be the reason for going up to the Carnegie? Because you'd have to have something in that space other than reading or, you know, or quiet space. I mean, or would, do you know what I mean?
What use would it be?
Yeah,
Mhm.
would it be something
Yeah,
that
and
would
that's,
be more dynamic?
I think that is the, you know, the more challenge with this one is that the other options, I can all just visualize how you could really connect to the Carnegie in terms of, you know, through the back wall or the side wall and how you can do that. And this one, we would have to just look at, you know, how we would do that to, you know, maybe that it's a glass tunnel, you know, that connects over, so it's just all light above and, because we do have the stairway on this end of the building, you know, where you could
So you could-
attach
you could-
into that and then go up.
You could
and-
make a, you know, a bigger two-story entry. We've got an elevator, and you could revise that stair so you came into a really vibrant,
the,
you know.
I think the interesting thing about this one is we initially thought about this idea simply as, well, gee, what would be the least thing that it would look like happen to the park? And then after we got into it, like, you could actually do this. I mean, there is potential to do it as an option.
And I turned the color on this one because it's so hard to see it the other way. You know, and of course this is huge, and you know, you would develop that more intimately, I think, you know, so you could actually have a fountain or a spray park or, you know, seating areas and that kind of thing.
Would there be a way to do, I mean, if you're coming underground into the Carnegie, would there be a way to do a really cool staircase then as you come into the Carnegie that
And
really
then go up
opens
into
it to
it.
the top floor? Because we've talked a lot about sort of the whole historical collection and maybe the seminar room or whatever. I mean, I can see some cool things happening in there with an interesting entry to it, maybe.
Would there be people who have claustrophobia who just the concept of an underground building?
It's possible.
I don't know.
You know, I'm going to speak to that because it is so nuts the way people think. Got to have windows, got to have light, and what did we do right here? We can't see a thing. We don't have any light. You know,
Close
they
it all up.
constantly are closing it up. You know, because I have a lot of tenants and I rent space. You know, I listen to these people demand outside windows, and then they want to know what kind of coverings they can put on so they can cover them up so nobody can see it.
I think it's a sense of escape. I think that, I mean, do you know what I mean?
I
I think for
completely
people to,
mystified.
no, but I can see if you're underground and something happens, that sense of being able to get, I know it's stupid and it may not make any rational sense, but
There
with a
are
window we could smash it
portion
and
of
get
people.
out.
Right.
If you have a gunman as a librarian, I think about this constantly. If you have a gunman come into that building and section off an area, where people can't get escape because it's above you.
Mhm.
That's, sorry, Moses.
You sound like such a teacher right now.
I know, I'm sorry. I know, but I mean, it's what you think about.
Passion,
Is
I like
what
it.
What do
Yeah.
you do in those, so.
But that's
I mean,
exactly the same thing as what happens on any
I
floor
know,
above grade.
I'm not saying it's rational.
No,
at all.
any
Yeah.
above
But
grade
it's the
floor.
psychology of
It's
it.
the
No, I
psychology.
think that's a good
You know,
observation.
It is.
Second floor or higher.
Yeah.
You know, because we'd have to have at least one other exit. We'd probably put, you know,
Oh
a
yeah, and you
couple
can
in,
need
or
an
you
elevator by
could-
the stairs.
all
and-
those kinds of
right.
things.
I mean,
But this is like, it's an idea that could work. You know, I guess that's the,
Well, that's
yeah,
a big
right?
surprise.
It is,
about
yeah.
this.
It was, I know.
Yes, yeah.
So in Camden, Maine, where my my mother-in-law lives, they took their historic library that sat on top of this grassy knoll, and on the downhill side of it, they built into the hole. They have like, you know, a wall of windows looking out.
hmm
There's a whole first floor, and then there's a second floor, and then the existing building is like the reading room that you go upstairs or an elevator to.
Mm.
And it's really, really interesting. It's somewhat similar to this. They really made use of that hill. Instead of covering it up with building, they went into the hill. And that library is crazy busy all the time.
Hmm.
It's very, very interesting.
Mhm. Hmm.
So I mean, we still have geotech and water and water table and stuff like that because to do to get trees to grow on top of a roof, you're going to have to bury that sucker. To have your 3 feet water membrane and then be able to to occupy it as a park, but it's still
Well,
pretty
we
cool.
thought it was intriguing,
I
and
think it totally is.
you know,
I
it's
really
like,
want to point out that, we still have the option of rerouting the stream through the.
that's right.
Is that-
Right down the middle.
Yeah, right now it's under Jefferson or under Sixth or something, I think.
Yeah.
Do you know how deep?
Not very deep,
That's not good.
so anyway.
Okay, so that's the range was looked at, and again, to your point, we're not working on them like architecturally yet, like what it would really look like, because we can make them look like anything. It's more about the idea of how we respect, how we connect to the Carnegie, and how it feels in the park. And then I think the other part is just how's it work programmatically. We got to be building a contemporary modern library that's going to be flexible and good for another 100 years or more.
Which of them I think that some of them did, have an outdoor area that is confined though, like an outdoor room
Mhm.
attached? Which one of the?
Yeah, so the wraparound one had a courtyard space that could also connect to the inside,
There, yeah.
that idea.
Kind of this
So
that
something that
space
could
would,
give you an outdoor space that,
People really like that.
yeah. And I think with all of these, we could do that if you wanted to actually confine space, fence it.
Corners, outside ones.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in the one, like a lot of these aren't developed, but this corner, that's sunken into the hill.
Mhm.
So if you're going to get light there, then you're going to have to regrade there, and there could really be this series, of gardens, that are adjacent to the building. So you get these grand views, and then
Right. The indoor-outdoor concept is really strong. I got those little handouts that I was doing for all the, and
Oh,
I only
right.
got like 30 something of them back. But of those, the highest vote getter was indoor-outdoor,
Hmm.
whatever.
Mhm.
Pay attention to indoor-outdoor. It was
Awesome.
maybe even higher than children's room as being
Oh.
important.
Mhm.
So indoor-outdoor concept, especially because it's in a park,
Mhm.
is really, really important.
So then even if you didn't have a real outdoor area, that makes it sound like people want to feel like they're
Mhm.
connected to the
Yeah.
outdoors, which
Mhm.
make the underground maybe problematic.
exactly.
Right.
I was
Mhm.
going to say,
Mhm.
you preserve one and sacrifice the other.
Yeah.
And so, do you want a beautiful house and be outside looking at it or inside using it? Kind of thing.
Let's go back to the first, and we'll just click through
Can we
them.
stay
Go-
right on that just for
Yeah,
one more
oh, yeah.
second? Okay. Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Wrap
I
around.
got that. Uh-huh.
There.
So when we were at the workshop earlier
Mm-hmm.
on this, a version of that you had was the, instead of the entry being directly on Sixth, you had it tucked
Right.
into the.
Into here.
Right there.
Yeah.
And then the westward expansion sort of arched its way around I'm sorry, the west
East.
side down here.
Oh,
It sort of
down
arched
here,
its
yes.
way around the fountain.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that looked very dramatic.
Coming down here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Just sort of wrapping that
Mm-hmm.
and having that plaza in
Mhm.
the center there. And
Yeah.
I thought as the main entry, I thought that connected the Carnegie to the new building so much more.
Here, right here.
Yes, in there.
So entry here and then really connecting here
And
to the
wrapping
spray
around
park.
that.
Yeah, good, okay.
And I saw, I think you had some sketching
We
done
did.
on that.
Yep. Mhm.
And I really, that one really struck me as
Mhm.
being quite interesting.
Yeah, that's a great point because one of the things that we looked at early on was really just bringing the entry right past the Carnegie. So you're actually experiencing that as well. So the only thought we had there is, you're going between the spray park and the Carnegie. Is that going to feel right? I mean, I think it could be pretty nice.
Well,
You
there was
get-
strong visibility still from
Ex-
both, for entry from both,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
both streets.
yeah. So that's a great point.
I think, yeah.
I really, that one, and then of course with the addition of the courtyard there, that's a straight see-through thing.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful.
Yeah, that would work really well.
Yeah, good thought.
I was kind of looking to see that develop.
Mm-hmm.
Does
I
it
guess-
soften the corner? The round
Yeah,
corner?
the way the corner then looked was really cool because it sort of wrapped around the pool.
Right.
Came as
I mean, I
around
meant
cap.
a good way, like a
Yeah.
soft, like
Yeah.
a
Yeah, really.
softening.
Engaged
Yeah,
with it.
Really engaged,
Mhm.
and so it became an obvious.
Yeah, I think we'd take that mass and push it over a little bit and center it on the
Yeah.
splash pad.
Mhm.
The one reason I think we didn't show that is that you're just pushing the entry further back,
Where?
and already the perception is
It's too far. away.
it's
Too far.
too far,
Where this
so.
gives it a real street presence.
And you could do
Oh,
you
I
could
see
do
what
the,
you're saying, yeah.
you could do the drop off, or you could have the book drop, or, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
But it is possible, even with any of these, we could still create what is like a covered entry from
You could.
Sixth, and even if you still entered here, you could be undercover. Like we've got some of the like pavilion
Mm-hmm,
ideas where you could have a trellis or something that brings you in, so that you feel like you've entered the building
Right.
here or here, and then it's really down here. And that way you then also connect this way, so both ways. So that's a good thought.
Wasn't there some concern about the distance having to walk so far? I think there.
Mm-hmm. We heard that.
Heard
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. And I don't know, I guess we forgot to measure it, but it's,
4 or 5 steps.
50 feet or so back there. So let's go back to the beginning. Just throw out any thoughts you have now that you've seen it all, and so really we're talking about a couple of 2-story ideas. We've got a couple of 1-story ideas where it could be a non-building, or it could be a pavilion building, or it could wrap around. And I like what DA's talking about. We could certainly refine that and make it even more dynamic with the park, the wraparound idea. Can you go through the SketchUps?
Yeah,
Joan?
I just.
They're all open now, right?
Yep.
Okay,
So
cool.
I'm just kind of going through those.
So let's just start at the beginning and.
Kind of the
So
two
any
s-
kind of initial, just throw out any kind of initial thoughts or reactions you have to these as we go.
That ramp would probably go away,
Do you
right?
want to try the colors? Sue?
Let's see what it looks like.
The
Joan's
ramp-
mentioning we
The
have
ramp on
that.
the south of the building, that would
And
go
then-
away, right?
This ramp right here, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Right.
So here is the models with just a little, we're indicating glass and maybe a masonry or something
Right.
like that, and we're not sketching up the lines as much, so you can see it a little bit clearer.
This would be very acceptable to a lot of people.
Yes, it would be.
This one? Yeah.
Well, I think it's probably the most boring of the bunch.
And I was gonna use the term sterile.
Sterile, boring,
Yeah.
acceptable.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Those don't sound like
Put together.
ringingly like, I love it.
Hey, you asked for it, Sid.
I know. That's what I want to hear, actually. Yeah.
And we'd like to hear too, like if it looks too modern or it looks, you know, I mean.
Well, the looks I don't want to get wrapped up into
Well,
yet.
But, right, but.
We want to talk about the idea. Because that'll be our next step is, based on the direction we go with these, is how we start to make these look like buildings. And it's hard not to do the model and not make it look like something, but it's not like that's what we don't want to
I
focus on
know.
that. So it's kind of it's a double-edged sword.
I like the advantage of being up higher in a building.
Huh.
The two-story. Mm-hmm. And what do you think about, this is the smallest of the footprints of everything. So is that, is that a big deal? Is that an important factor?
I think that's Mo's question. I think that's your question. I mean, with a smaller footprint, what are we able to do? What needs to be done?
With the two-story?
Yeah, I mean, it would still have all its parts. It would just be choppier. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
And you'd need more staff to operate it, probably, from a programming standpoint. But depending on how we do the two-story space, we've done two-story libraries that, they work, perfectly well.
My take on a two-story is that because the existing building is also already two-story, it would force the basement of the existing building to be staff space. That may end up being what we want down there anyway, but it doesn't give us many options because we cannot staff like 3 levels. That's just insanity, So
Yeah.
that's kind of another one of the drawbacks of adding a two-story building onto this.
I mean, I think it's
Okay.
nice that this is a smaller footprint, but I also think on the one-story drawings, you've done such a good job of not losing what people value in that park.
Oh, okay.
That personally, I would opt for a one-story, and I don't know which one, but I just right out of the chute. And I like being up high and looking out windows too, but I think for this, I don't know.
What?
Yeah,
I like what you're
that's
saying.
I think that a fair comment is the two-story options that we're talking about really creates a three-story situation.
That's
right?
true.
I mean, it
Yeah.
does. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good
you have
point.
the lower floor of the Carnegie.
Yep. Yep.
Main floor of the Carnegie, which is roughly equal to the main floor of the new addition, and then you have a floor above. So you really have 3 levels.
Yeah.
Now, is that,
It's,
the basement of the Carnegie, is that included in the square footage of
Yes,
the
it
total
is.
project? Okay.
Yeah.
So we
I didn't know if
can't.
that
we-
could just be kind of storage or.
Well, I mean, even storage counts.
Okay.
in
We're gonna
square
have to-
footage.
right.
We need some. The storage, mechanical, all that stuff. But it's the staffing. It's not that it's not space we wouldn't have somewhere, but it's for purposes of staffing. We don't have to staff the staff area. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's kind of the idea.
All right.
I mean, it wouldn't be completely wasted space. We just cut down on our options of what it could be
Yeah.
used as.
yeah. So the other question would be in this, as we look at these, the question of its impact on the existing building and how you feel about that. Is it seem like it is being subordinate? Is it being too big? Or, is there any kind of gut reaction to that?
I think for me, I have to see more exterior color and work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Gotcha. I think that's
Because we're really
fair.
just looking at kind of massing of buildings right now,
Yeah.
not the detail part.
And the main entrance, I think, has to be through the Carnegie on this one. It's just so.
Oh, I mean.
On that one, yeah.
Mhm.
Just looks at it
Yeah,
so much.
yeah. Okay, how about thoughts about this one where upper patio space, lower, step back?
I like that building on its own. I don't necessarily like it in relationship to
Ah.
Carnegie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a beautiful building, and I'd love to visit it, but it doesn't. I don't feel like the connection as much.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about the
Though I
first
love
one?
the trees.
What'd you think about the
I
first
think
one?
it's boring.
Yeah. But does it feel like it fits with the
More
Carnegie?
so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wonder, is that just stylistically?
I,
Because, I mean, there is some kind of implied kind of style with these.
probably, and then the windows rising up, the way the windows are higher.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Carnegie.
Yeah.
I like the first one if the ramp isn't to the front. I
Yeah.
actually prefer the first one with the grander, like, plaza
Oh,
entranceway.
over to the 6th Street.
I do.
Mhm.
That's kind of the ramp. Okay,
Okay.
so there's this one.
I did like the windows, how you said, thinking of it lit up, seeing the activity inside.
A lantern kind of idea.
I think most of them will do that.
Yeah.
I
We will
mean,
do that.
given
Yeah,
the
definitely.
nature, so that I don't think
Even if
is
we
more
go
than
underground,
intrinsic.
we're going to have
All
lanterns.
right, so where are we? We're just
Coming
going through
above
the
it.
SketchUp, right?
Yeah, just go through the
Okay,
SketchUp.
All right. Then there's this guy, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn these guys on.
That's so helpful.
Yeah, we just didn't want, we wanted to kind of keep them all equal, you know, but here's this one, that's the curve to curve.
I like that one a lot.
And I have to
Yeah,
say,
I actually do too.
For a two-story solution, that really
Do you?
has pizzazz.
Something interesting about it?
Yes, it is.
I tell you the thing, if you look at it from the standpoint of it's a non-competitor with the existing library because it's not trying to be anything like it.
I really like it.
Well,
And-
the really the interesting thing about that is, and as we've seen so many pictures of modern libraries in relation to the Carnegies,
Yeah.
this one doesn't compete. It provides a backdrop that we talked about earlier, and is architecturally interesting instead of just being, oh, it's got to be a glass box.
A box on the back,
What I
yeah.
also like about it is that if the windows aren't to the corners the way you have them, you could actually be in the building and look at the Carnegie
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
to the
right.
side.
Gives you a different perspective, doesn't it?
I think if we could lower that down too.
Yeah, I think that's the,
I think that's the
what's
key.
killed me is that
it looks so
mass.
big, but if you imagine going down like a half a level, which you could do with this.
Yes.
And then, as Joan was talking about, have some kind of a cool, like, amphitheater seating or something that took you up into the Carnegie. I mean, that would be like very respectful from inside, you know, because it's keeping that same idea of the entry from the front, where you elevate yourself to knowledge. You know, we could be doing the same thing from inside. So basically, the ground floor would be at like the level out in front of the existing building, so that you're coming up into it. So there is some. Because I
That would be
agree. I mean, it
pretty
just
fun.
feels too tall, but I know we could push it down, and it would look very, very different.
And I think too, the plan, you know, it's got a lot of stuff moving around. I think we can simplify that too. But
So if it was a two-story, I'm hearing this way over the other ones. Would that be accurate?
and if I'm making
For
you
a
guys
two-story.
dizzy,
For a
I like
two-story.
This one
Yeah.
better
See
than
the-
any of the others. Yeah.
want
What do
to
you
come
think,
in.
Brian?
The problem we're going to have is that this is in the center of a historic neighborhood.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to kind of prepare you for some conversations
Right.
that you're going to have.
Well,
when
I-
you go visit the neighborhood here. So,
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for having the old and the new,
Mhm.
and having that junction there. So, but if you know, and especially the underground one, is that is so far from the historic neighborhood,
Yeah.
the surroundings. I just don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Well, that's why we looked at all the ideas.
You got
It's
to. No, I love it when you
I think
think
I think
outside
we're
the
all
box
about
like this.
ideas right now, and it's there's no right or wrong answer. It's simply ideas.
And each
And-
idea solves a different,
Yeah.
like this one saves
They all
the
have
trees,
pros and
you know,
cons
the big
and,
trees.
You know, and that's why people got to understand why they hire these guys to do this. Is that we've got to exhaust our resources here, and that's so that 10 years from now somebody says, "Well, why didn't we do that?" Well,
Yeah.
because of that. you
That's
know.
right.
Okay.
I just
But-
think it doesn't compete. I think that there's something really nice about this, that it complements but does not. I mean, it doesn't. It's neutral,
Mhm.
even though it's very.
It is.
different.
It really the concept is it's a backdrop
Yeah.
for the building. You know, versus trees being the backdrop. It's really just a like a masonry wall. I mean, again, this could have a living wall on it, or it could be, you know,
Could be wood.
anything. Could be wood.
When you were talking before about reflective windows, I think that would be a problem. I think it would be, the backdrop would be too busy
Mhm.
from the Carnegie
Mm-hmm.
to have anything that sort of.
Yeah, so that was kind of the
activity.
non-building idea, which is just reflecting what's there, you
I
know.
think it would be a little confusing.
So I
Okay.
wonder if there's just one little detail off of that Carnegie that we could
Mm-hmm.
put on that building that says, you know, we are different, but you know, we are together.
Yeah, I'm trying
Yeah.
to, I'm not sitting here, there's.
It could be brick color, it could be banding.
And
You
the
know,
banding, you
the
know,
banding, because you see it,
Or
the
the
strong,
detailing.
the strong lines that it
Yes.
has, you know?
Right.
If you imagine just picking up the water table here, you pick up windows here,
Yes.
you pick up cornice there, and it
Yes.
could be just subtle, it could be, you know, something that could be very cool is do it all in the same color of brick, but just have relief so that it, you know, it creates shadow lines and
Right.
that sort of thing
Yeah.
so that there's this nice subtle kind of connection. Or you could make it look, you know, the same. I'm personally
Yeah.
not hot on that
I-
idea.
I
You don't want to
I
make
like
it the
it.
same. I just thought
Being
if there's a
plain.
small
Yes.
detail.
Small detail.
That says, I'm part, not like what happened to the church, and it's, I got to,
Oh, the church.
Yeah.
that's, you know, there's, you know, even when that was going on, said,
Yeah.
I even said, can't you guys take one little detail off
Something.
of that church and put on there? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, like weird color.
Yeah.
well,
That's what they
just
thought.
everything. I'm sitting there,
Not
so,
even color.
you know, there's a great example of how I don't want this to happen.
Yeah.
You know?
But you can see with this, I mean, it's a blank slate. So
Yes.
do what you want with it. I mean, you could use colors or patterns or anything to give it that kind of a.
Is there any reason, though, if the curve became too controversial in the historic district,
Mhm.
the concept of creating a screen, if you will, that the existing building sits in front of could be done in a rectilinear building as well.
Mhm.
I mean, you
Can't
could
try
say,
it. Let's see.
that's our concept, we're not gonna open the building to, so that could be a flat wall, I guess, as well as a curved wall.
Could be.
Still
But
achieve
yeah,
the same.
You could actually, the diagram that we started with, it was really just two bent boxes to move away from the tree canopy.
Mhm. So
And then
it,
we just smoothed it
Kind of
out.
a chevron
so it,
shape.
Yeah, so it could be a bent shape, or it, or it could be fragmented or something like that.
So I guess what I'm getting at is if that's
Mhm.
an appealing concept that, you know, the back is a screen for
Yeah.
for the Carnegie to sit on, then there's
Mhm.
other ways to do it too
yep.
in a rectilinear building.
No, great point. And but I think just visually, by going down that half a level would make this look so different. You know,
Oh, yeah.
of being able to pull that down.
Then it
Is that
really
possi-
would be a neutral backdrop.
Is that
I think.
possibility to see?
Yeah.
Try it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll definitely do that with it.
Why would you want to go down lower?
So you
Just
wouldn't
to-
have all that.
Just to drop the mass of the
Seems
building.
like that might be so boring if it was the same height.
Oh,
Well,
it wouldn't
wouldn't be the same height.
Oh.
It would be, you know, we're talking about down probably another 4.5 feet. So it's still going to be higher for sure. But it would just be a matter of giving that screen proportionately a little shorter so that it becomes more rectangular than it is right now.
And I think, if it was masonry and, you didn't articulate, but you would use the same kind of texture, that the Carnegie is. It's got the deep rake joints and it's a pretty flat brick, so it looks real craft, kind of, which is, which I think would be very appropriate, instead of something slick and tight. It's kind of,
Cool. Okay.
Was there a reason why the building didn't go farther south towards the, I guess it's that big tree, isn't it?
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in order to preserve
You
that
say
tree.
Right.
that one, and that one, and those are the
It
big
still gives
trees.
relationship to that corner.
Now, those are the oaks, Joe.
It opens up, and that was to your point, it would open the corner up for the visibility.
Yeah.
There's just there may not be as much. It just seems like more space,
Mhm.
So,
even though it's.
So one other comment I would have, I think if we get into a curved scheme, laying out stacks in a curved building could be challenging.
I don't know, all the stacks that I've seen in the new library materials are all curved stacks, so.
Really?
Yep,
You can buy curved
Interesting.
stacks?
yep,
Oh, that's a new one on me.
yep.
Okay,
Fasten
I
it.
just solved my problem.
If it's a big curve, you can facet it. So,
So we can even
Yeah.
have curved stacks in a rectangular building.
yeah.
So that'd be
We
a-
will.
There's a little shake
We
up.
definitely will have some.
There's a shake
They're
up.
very interesting.
Okay, so those were the two-story ideas, and then in general, what's the feeling about two-story versus one-story? Is there strong opinion? An opinion?
I think that it's important for the library staff. I think my preference is to a one-story, because I do think it allows for future flexibility. And with the designs that you've shown us, I think that there's still integrity with the park, so
It could work.
it could work.
Mhm. Cool. Anybody else?
I'm not wedded that we have to have a two-story building, but as a user, I always like more sense of different areas, and
Mhm.
two-story offers that.
Yeah, which is a great point. I mean, it definitely gives you a different perspective from inside.
You know, there's always the conversation about form over function.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm listening to Mo as far as the function, and we're talking about form here,
Yeah,
and so, but then again, I know that the more of that park that we can save, and everybody was really thrilled with that first perspective that came
Yeah,
out.
right.
With, we're all in the canopy of the trees and
yeah.
stuff. You know, it's just going to be interesting to watch the rest of the groups that are involved with this,
Mhm.
how they come out with this.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Whoa,
Yeah.
I'm hallucinating.
We went blue.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
said as the board member, my opinion is for a single story is probably better for the library.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially with your disappearing building solution, I don't think anybody's going to miss the square footage of the park that isn't there because it's in the library.
Mhm.
Because it'll either be reflected back at them or they'll be inside and still feel like they're not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think functionally, and I'm just thinking from a library point of view.
Yeah.
We really should have a single-story solution.
Mm-hmm.
The libraries are for patrons, not for the library as an institution, and so sometimes you have to balance it.
True, that's true.
I guess I have a question that'll help me with my thinking. Is when people talk about the park, are they talking about the right-hand side of the building?
Yeah.
Because that's what I think of for a park.
Mhm.
Or are they talking about the trees? Because all of the renderings you've shown us have it weighted over to the
Correct.
section that I think of as park.
Yeah.
Whereas I think of the left-hand side, I know it's beautiful driving up, but again, if you have a building that's receding into the green, is that less impactful? Like, do people lay in the grass to the left-hand side of the building?
That's exactly what I was
And
gonna ask.
I mean, that road is so darn busy that we avoid it like the plague, in all honesty. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like I'm putting my life on the line to get to Singer Hill, even with the new crosswalk, which is great. But I'm just curious as to when people say the park,
Mhm.
what are people saying? Are they
Mhm.
talking about the play space that is more kid-friendly, or are they talking about the left-hand side, which has the trees?
We
I
did a
think
little
it's-
survey, and it was almost equal
Mhm.
between the canopy, the play park, and the Carnegie.
Okay.
You know,
Mhm.
so like there's those in the back zone was a little lost, but you know, so people they either sit up on the kind of northeast side and look down,
On the hill.
the hill and see the sunset, or they're playing in the park, or they love the approach to the Carnegie. You know,
So the
those
approach actually not on the physical premise, correct?
the front we had them zone it, and
Okay.
the actual, once you're in the park, actually entering the Carnegie, that view. And it was because we were curious about that.
The one
I'd
nice
say-
thing about having it this way is that many people approach it from that side, as
Mhm.
opposed to the 7th Street side.
Well, we heard a lot. It seemed like the most important view and wanting the least impact on the existing building was from the 7th and Adams, from that corner. And so I think that's what led us to push that direction, and the, endless discussions about the trees and, the impact of those. So I think that's what pushed us that direction. The other part is that it seemed like the big thing was the splash pad, which we think we could keep or modify it, even with pushing that direction on that side.
Because that's not really in the budget to replace.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
We all thought that even though driving by was not being in the park, it's one of the kind of the iconic views in Oregon City of that lake. You look out kind
It
of from
is.
that corner, and it's and so if we were thinking if we could kind of build behind, like that's one reason that wrap works so well, because you're looking at it from that diagonal, and it kind of melts into the. So, but yeah, that's not every angle, obviously. Yeah, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I just want to go back to that comment on the park. For the record, I am not impressed by the amount of people using this park. I think it's completely. When I drive by some of the parks in the middle of summer in Portland, they're just loaded with people, and it's pretty quiet up here at the Carnegie, even on a day like today, where you would expect to find people out reading a book, lying on the lawn.
I was surprised too.
You only see
today.
one or two.
There were
That's all.
like 4 kids maybe.
Oh well, you guys missed it because there was a class load of like I don't know where they came from, but at least I would say 40 kids were using in one class with 3 adults and other families that were there, and they were running all around and in and out of the building and screaming and hollering. But
I think the bottom line is, and I don't think that Oregon, this particular park is utilized anywhere near as intensely as I think inner city parks. So having, that's my off the street reservation or observation of just looking every time I go to the Carnegie, I'm thinking about these park people and why it's so important to them when there's so few people using it. And I'm still more inclined to favor the library dominant solution to how we get our square footage and not be quite so bothered about what happens in the park. I think a couple of these are just wonderful in terms of protecting the canopy, and I mean, even with the single story and more square footage being committed to the library out of the park, I still think you've done it to the point where I don't think anyone's going to miss that square footage.
Well, hopefully it'll enhance what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think will be the case. Good. Okay. So great comments.
We don't have money to do something different in the park area, in the play area. Because I could see doing something a little more interesting and different. And there are other parks nearby that have a spray park not very far away. And that's we don't have money because it belongs to the park. What was it?
what?
It's not.
The
spray
spray
park?
park. The playground
That's-
belongs to a park.
That's park. Yeah, that's a different department. I mean, if we intruded greatly on something, then we would, have to put some money into it to make it usable and everything else, but.
I don't think you have to, in any of your solutions, I don't think you have to move the.
Well, we're trying to not do that. I mean, all of these respect and keep it where it's at now, and I guess after looking at it enough, we think we could keep it there. And, that's one less thing for people to get excited about. And I think it works.
So this is,
Yes.
yep. So here's kind of the first of the one stories, pretty spread out, simple bar, low, so if you come in, kind of we were looking at that view before, kind of standing here, right?
So this would give us more of that non-building idea here. Very much looks like the park goes right into the building.
You know, and then, you know, a little bit of fun, you know, on the corner.
Lots of fun.
Actually, really lots.
That's
of
it.
fun.
We're going to do lots of fun.
See, I think that's what Mr. Carnegie had in mind when he did that building, was try to bring that outside in. And that's what you're doing with that too also, is that
Well, that's
it kind of they complement each other that way.
So again, I think, you know, materiality, you'd keep it, you know, in the same tone, you know, and then just have a little bit of punch. All
So this
right.
one would be the non-building kind of idea. Any other thoughts on this? Strike anybody good, bad, indifferent?
As long as you keep the rain out.
Well, okay.
With the non-building, we do have books in there, you know.
Tent structure.
And so then here's kind of the bar, you know.
I like the entrance on this one better,
Mm-hmm.
with the solid wall there,
Mhm.
and that sort of overhang. But I like the previous one with the trees and the pavilion.
Oh, up
Pavilion
front.
idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is pretty traditional looking too, and probably easily acceptable by a lot of people.
Yeah,
What do
we
you think
wouldn't
about
push
it?
the envelope much on this one.
I think, you know, I think here actually, you know, where it's just, it's simplicity, you know. So, you know, I think people, I guess this would be one of our, thinking this is one of the more contemporary, you know, buildings where you've got a really tight curtain wall, really tight thin roof. You know, it's you know, it stands off from kind of the brick box, you know, kind of thing. We love it. I mean, I don't think we're showing anything other than maybe the traditional two-story, you know.
Ryan, what do you think the cooling tower?
What do you mean by that, John?
Well, I think that the two-story traditional is probably, you know, that was in reaction to where the design was left off. You know, and you guys are even saying, well, it's neutral, it's acceptable, it's kind of predictable, you know, kind of thing. But I think everything.
Boring.
That's what's fun, because there's so much detail on the Carnegie there. When you really get out and look at that building,
Yeah,
all the
oh,
detail. it was
drippy
like
with detail.
Zero here.
This looks like I've seen it 100 times, but that doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah, yeah.
I like how you have that length and then the steps coming down. Sort of, it's an like
Mhm.
amphitheater, or just
Yes, you can kind of sit out there.
Nice plaza.
yeah.
I think that's very welcoming.
Yes.
I mean, you can tell exactly where you ought to be going there. This is
That's
the
a great
entrance.
point.
very
It's, you know,
intuitive.
if we're not using
really want
the
it.
existing Carnegie as the entry, we got to be really clear on how you get to the door,
Yep.
and that it's not
And-
confusing.
And all those steps, I think, it's a really nice touch there.
That could be public space. That, you know, again, all right, we took out the swings, and you know, but now there's hardscape. There's a plaza space. There's
And
you
would that
know,
be lawn under where the tree is? So you still have that
Over here?
No, to the left.
Yes, yes.
So you could
yeah.
see families
So-
sitting
yeah,
on
so
the
Oh,
more
yeah.
people are going to sit on those steps.
I frankly
and
think it'll
watch
get
their
more
kids.
use when something like this occurs. I'm onto what you're thinking, DA. I think that there will be
Oops, sorry
a
about
whole
that,
new
guys.
energy to that park by now having a bigger library that's really got the services. You know, we heard of like families, young families that are going to other libraries because, you know, they can't get,
Lots of
you know,
young
that
families,
there just
yeah.
isn't the services there now. Well, when that is happening, it is going to be so much more energized than it is now, I think. Okay, let's take a look at the next one.
And it's, you know, it does kind of open up, you know, there's the connection between the two.
So is there anything here, because I'm thinking about our next step is going to be to meet with the McLaughlin neighborhood, and we can tweak these to make them look a little, you know, less modernish, but is there anything here that you feel that we should not show, or there's something else we should show? Any thoughts? Brian, you'd have great insight.
I just think that you ought to show all of them, just like you did tonight.
Yeah.
And just show this range
Mhm.
of thinking, because I think it's just a great job. So I think,
Cool.
I think Now, there's a limited number there that are just the local people that walk down here and use that playground, and their kids are this big, but sooner or later, their kids are gonna be this big. So we can't think
They're going to be
about,
smoking on that wall.
this.
Solving
Not mine.
the immediate thing.
Exactly, we've
Yeah.
got to think kind of long range here, and you got to think about the other citizens of this community and not just about our own little world here. So I think by keeping that spray park, and if that could turn into kind of a year, more of a maybe a 10-month usage. Obviously, there's going to be days where it's snow and everything else, but if there's some way to put some kind of pavers or something on top of that wall, it's actually more inviting to sit on when it's not in use, but to read and things like that.
That's a good point.
That we could actually
So enhance that, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a good thought.
So otherwise, just cement.
Now, if they really get involved with the swing and stuff like that, could that happen there?
Well-
the lower part in front of the library in that
Yeah.
little area, could that?
Or it could flip over to the other side too. That's the other possibility is
Yeah.
that the swing just
Yeah.
moves over to the other side, and it's now we visually see, all the way across. Laura, what were you thinking?
I'm just thinking of that traffic on that side.
Yeah.
On
Seven.
Seventh.
You'd have to have some kind of.
Well, this thing is giant. I mean,
I guess my thought is I understand that idea of the kids growing up. However, I like to think that if you have something that's attractive to young families, my kids are going to be grown, yes, in 7 years, but I would hope that our neighborhood would attract people who are going to, continue
that's
to be
right.
productive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think for me,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
making
You always
something.
want that
You're going to have
rotation.
people moving from Portland down here who are going to choose this neighborhood because they can walk to this library
Yeah.
and they can go to a spray park. Like,
Yeah.
trust me, it was a huge part in our decision to purchase in our home
Yeah.
on Monroe. So I think there is a contingent that's going to really help boost the economy of Oregon City in the future. But I think doing things like making that a more seating, so people
Yeah.
can enjoy it.
What can we do more
Space.
year round?
Yeah.
I think that's a great point.
Sure, sure.
Because that's what I thought about it. Initially, I'm thinking it's a cool deal, but what if it's only used in the summer?
Yeah.
Well, there's 9 months a year that it's a concrete pad, and so what can we do to enhance that to make it an interactive park? Because it's cool. I mean, it really says park and activity and all of those things.
Yeah,
And-
I also think we're really lucky that it's not a bright splash park like some of the other ones. I think that it's a very old-fashioned one. It reminds me of the ones in Boston. Boston has a lot of the just concrete ones.
Yeah.
So I actually really like that it's simple
Mhm.
because it's going to work with whatever there might be. It just does need to be enhanced.
Good. Okay.
all right.
On to the next one.
Let's see. That was the wrap, right?
We didn't do the wrap.
We didn't do the wrap
We
yet.
didn't really talk about it.
And I think I like your comments, DA. We could certainly look at the entry up into that.
That's the wrap.
I'm kind of feeling like entry from both sides
That's the
to
wrap.
that one.
Yeah, could well work.
Because I think that one, it gets you back in, and it would also be something from a programming standpoint, is the more we can get that entry into the center, the easier it is to control
That's right.
all of those spaces.
That's
So
true.
I think that has a lot of good things about it. Could you go to the wrap one, Joan,
You betcha.
please?
That's this one right
Yeah.
here.
So I think that one, and we could really play up the idea of the inside-outside and how we could bring trees into the building.
I think compared to the earlier one, though, I feel that this entranceway is less
Yes.
welcoming.
Me
Yeah,
too.
I agree.
Completely, I feel that.
I don't like the wall right next to the,
No.
Or is
the
it the
weight
roof
thing.
that's coming out so far?
Here,
Yeah.
you're talking about,
Yeah.
well, even the windows and
They're
stuff.
too
it's
close.
Compared
just-
to that
I
one.
would prefer that.
So one thing I
Yeah, I
really
prefer
liked,
that
Sid,
one.
was the, I guess you could call it the pavilion thing, but you had a walkway there. Right? Everybody liked the steps, right?
Mhm.
Right.
The
So if you
walkway
have
here.
a covered walkway, so
yeah.
perhaps you do have an entry right where you're showing it there, and then a covered walkway that goes over to the other entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then
That
that
would be
covered
great.
walkway steps down into the splash pad. And
Maybe
you've
that's
got,
the
you know,
backdrop for the
it's-
splash pad
it's got a
instead
lot
of the
energy.
building.
I like that.
Well, that's a cool thing, though, because then it would say, well, you can enter from this way, you can enter from this way.
Right.
you know, and it does, I think, really engage this side of the building to the park. Because, you know, the thing, if you just have steps and things, I mean, that starts to engage people anyway. Because you can sit on them, you know, the kids will play on them. I mean, it's...
And it reflects the Carnegie.
If they
Yeah.
were broad enough and it was
Yeah,
extended
with
over,
the base.
would it be possible, and I don't know how the library, but to do like tables and chairs, the way what's the name of the park downtown Portland? The house.
Parker's Park.
Yeah. Do you know?
Mhm.
Director's
Yeah.
Park, where they have the
Yeah.
big chess set down there, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, no chest set.
No, that's, but that's a cool idea that, you
Cool.
know, getting it more furniture, so site furniture, so it encourages people to sit down, take a break. And the other thing I think would be great here is, if I'm a parent, I mean, if I sit up here, it's great, because you're sheltered and you can see the kids, but, you know, you can be away from the hubbub.
One other comment I have. In all the schemes where we've placed the entry closer to 6th, if you're walking from the far side,
From 7th?
7th,
Mhm.
Right here.
now you have to walk the entire block to get
Yep.
into the building.
still go
No, you can still cut right across there, can't you?
Well,
Mhm.
yeah, there.
Yeah.
But
Wait,
I guess
yeah.
I'm saying if
It's
you
right.
only have an entry on 6th, and we're
Right.
not using the Carnegie
Right.
as a main entry, then
Yeah.
you really force someone who's walking to walk catty corner to
Yeah,
do
from
that.
over
Whereas
here.
if you have the entry
There.
tucked back in there,
Mhm.
it's not so far from the
Oh, I
existing entry.
I think you've got to use the entry to the main entry we're used to if you think you need 2 entries. Because, I mean, people see that as an entry.
Are you talking about this one?
Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
if you're going to have 2, I think that should be one of them, not around the corner or the back of it, as
Mhm.
well as on 6th Street.
Mhm.
Just because of how it looks, I think.
I'm having trouble ever envisioning the existing entry being closed, actually.
I think it would be really weird to not have that, an access point into the building.
Mhm.
there
That's
from
how
the
it
front.
is in Ashland, and, you know, I walked up there, and then you walk up, and then you walk up steps, and you see a sign that says, go down the road.
Yeah.
Go in. It's just not
Lots and
very-
lots of
Yeah.
those, you know,
Yeah.
classic examples. You know, because what typically happens is the Carnegies were pretty small. Most editions are much bigger than the original, and they, and because of the accessibility and the historical nature of it all, it's harder to use them as entries. You know, to make legit, accessible entries out of them.
You know, there's I think one of the most innovative additions, I think I might have it on my precedent, but it's a bigger building, but, you know, neoclassical, all the stairs, you know, you go up almost a full flight to get to the main entry, and it's like downtown Boston or something. They took the stairs out, and actually you went down into the base, to the lower level, and then they took out a big section of the floor. So then you walked into this wonderful 2-story kind of neoclassical. We could do that with the underground, and then you could go in. You could go into the underground part of the library. But it was just a genius. You know, where, you know, and I don't think we could do it here because of they had to do an insertion for it, but it was such a clever way
It's a
of,
cool idea.
it was a really cool idea.
Okay, so the takeaways I've got on the wrap is more engaging with the pad, which we had talked about. Creating an entry here is an idea, perhaps, you know, both directions. And then I think with this one too, we could do more with, you know, again, a little more inside outside. That'll work with any of them, really. You know, we could take that approach
I
with
think
them.
you disappear the building. As long as it's one story, you can still have all of those disappearing building elements.
Yes, yes.
Trying
I like the Lightwell courtyard.
Oh, the inside
Outside.
this one here.
on the other,
No, yeah.
up of.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah,
one up in the
yeah,
center.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a really nice concept. And
This one has, I think, a very kind of that asymmetrical balance. You know, that this room is kind of as equally important to this room. like this could be the children's or this could be the children's, and you could take advantage, of this kind of captured outdoor space, kind of thing. I think there's a lot really good about this one.
By adding that courtyard in the middle, it creates a lot of different spaces in that building.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might address, I understand the feeling of being able to walk in and find that there are other curious spaces to explore.
That's a great point, because really what would be cool if we did this kind of idea is that now that's a seating space that's outside, but it's inside the library. And then when you can sit around that as well, that's what I like about it is that you really start to puncture the building with light. So now we've got light that is not only from the perimeter, but we got it coming from inside. And that's a great way to really break a building down and get that inside-outside kind of feeling, and that you're always connected to light with it.
Is it possible to do that in the previous?
Yeah, we could do that with any of them, really. You could put that idea in. I think this one was the idea of creating this, it's like a void that creates a strong connection then between this piece and that piece, and that gives, and the idea of that being an entry, and then you walk in and then there's this courtyard behind. I mean, there's a lot of nice things about how that sets up. And
So like in the bar scheme?
Yeah, in the bar scheme we could do it, but your proportions are different there, so it may not be as effective.
But I think too, once we start programming the library and get more factors in, I somehow think the wrap and the bar will end up kind of being more, again,
Probably
these
more
are still
similar in the end.
diagrams. So I think actually when you start laying out the program and this and that you might end up more with this. Than you
Kind of get
really
that
would with the
massaging it.
bar, kind of thing. Where the bar, everything feels like it's behind, kind of that wall of glass. Where this still has the spine, but it's got a terminus here and kind of a terminus here. One kind of being an entry and the other one being, and maybe the more reason to bring you back here, and then that brings you into the Carnegie. So.
I think one of the other things that design like this one does, or at least what you have suggested on the roof there, is we're going to have rooftop equipment, more than likely.
Yep.
Unless we were able to bury it somewhere like in the lower floor of the
basement.
existing library. So that representation of a parapet there is probably pretty realistic. I mean, we're going to need something like that to screen mechanical equipment.
Yeah, if
particularly
you're
in
talking
this
about up here.
neighborhood. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
we may wind up with something like that, whether we like it or not, depending on the comments we get about screening mechanical equipment.
Right.
Yeah, very true.
But this one's got, it's a little bit taller, so it does,
Uh-huh.
I just feel like it's way too close to the spray park. Just, too close to this big cement.
Well, I think if
you
it
pull
were to
that back
wrap
a little.
around the spray park, and as Sid was talking about, putting a canopy and stair steps to it and so forth, it would give it a really nice proportion.
Celebrate the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, some combination of this one and the bar.
Yep, that's exactly.
That's where I
It's-
think it
I
would
think
be,
kind of
realistically, where it would
yeah.
end up.
That's what I kind of, I like the way this holds back, from this canopy. But the other one, the bar, you get that funky, you get that wonderful opportunity at the corner. So when you are going down 7th, you're like, ooh, what's that? And then,
true.
down Jefferson and into the 6th Street, entry.
Come in and check out a book?
Yeah.
I guess my only thing with this one is I do feel like the symmetry of the block is thrown off with this one.
The block,
Of
the symmetry of
yeah,
this, the
sorry.
overall.
Weighted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's has a, yes, it feels like to me when I look at it, almost like it's taking up more space. Is that what you're reacting? And it's exactly the same, but
I know.
it's funny, the illusion, it feels a little more packed on there. I would
You
agree.
have to really
Really?
talk about entry here, because we've talked about kind of 3 entry areas here now. We've got the new one kind of in the very center that DA brought up, and then we've got the one from 6th
Mhm.
And then we're talking about the existing entry.
Yeah, that's probably like at least
And
one
what
too
about
many.
the back wall, the
Yeah.
back of the, because of the parking lot being in the back there?
That's probably going to be staff parking.
Just the, so you aren't
Yeah.
concerned about entering?
Well, I think we gotta go back to Sid's original comments, though, that if the existing entry to the Carnegie is used as a main entry,
Yeah.
then we will have to have a ramp somewhere there. There's gonna be a ramp.
Yeah, we got to be able to get something out here.
And because it's the main entry, we're gonna have to tear apart.
That's what
The
the seismic,
existing
seismic.
seismic.
Mhm.
And,
so
and
would
really
be-
what that means practically, what that means is if all of the exterior walls, which are unreinforced masonry, we'll have to take down all the finishes on those walls. Those walls will have to be coated with concrete or a polymer resin or something to tie the unreinforced masonry together, and we'll have to put all the finishes back on the walls. So, as Sid mentioned, there's a requirement in the earlier report that we would have to put a plywood diaphragm on the roof if it's not there, which means we get to tear the whole roof apart, redo that. So
my
it's a really expensive proposition to make that building seismically code compliant.
Mhm.
That all,
It's not a
is
bad
that-
idea, but it's
It
expensive.
is, it's going to be big bucks.
Oh,
Yeah.
I have a question. If there's another entry, and that is one entry, does that mean it needs all that same thing?
Well, if it's.
Like, if there's a ramp at the other entry?
I think if we do another entry and we ramp, that's fully accessible. I think we could get by without having to do this one, but we would have to have, the other exits would have to be accessible so that, we've got multiple ways out of the building.
Right.
Accessible,
And-
with ramps and meet ADA compliant and all
And
that.
even then, the building official may ask us to do a variance request.
Right, and that could be,
Saying, we don't want to disturb the historic
Yeah, I
entrance
think-
to the building.
we probably would need to get a
It's an
variance for it.
entrance, but we don't want to disturb the
Yeah.
historic character, so we want a variance to avoid having to do
Yeah.
a ramp. That's a.
I think we would have to do
Yeah.
that. Because technically now, any entry or exit has got to be accessible.
That's right.
And so it just gets nutty for some buildings. It's very, very difficult to do. And so we do get exceptions, variances, if we
Right.
have, for things that just simply
Well,
can't.
when we
can't
talk
happen.
about stuff, I think that's important to tell people because
Come out through
if they
here.
understand that that's going to be required, if that stays like the only entrance or even a main entrance,
Mhm.
potentially, that gives you a different flavor
Mhm.
on like, well, wait a minute, maybe it is just an exit.
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of just the prep of, talking about all these is really what we know about the Carnegie and the impact on the entrances and the seismic portion of it. It's a big deal. I mean, it could turn into being a sizable budget chunk as well.
It's doable, but
Yeah.
it simply.
Everything's doable for the right
it
amount of
just-
money.
That's exactly right. There you-
Well, it's the kind of
Put
deal,
words
it's
out there.
where are you going to put the money in the end,
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's get on
Okay.
to this one because it's already 7
Yeah, we'll wrap up with this and see any
I
last
love this
thoughts.
one, but I just don't think it would fly, but I
Yeah,
really
I-
like it.
Sid, is it possible that,
intriguing.
I know you scoped out 15,000 feet,
Yeah,
but is it possible that it would engage the entire south end of the Carnegie? So that it was virtually open,
connect right to it.
not really a connecting corridor tunnel, but
Mm.
but
Side
in
by
fact,
side.
Side by side.
Yeah.
Just scooted over enough. I mean, were there some limitations when you were?
The only
laying
thing
it
we're
out?
looking at is just, structurally the impact on the existing building as we would excavate to do this. Do a
And
lot
this
of
will be
shoring required. and-
substantially lower
I'm
too.
not so sure about
Yeah.
that though, because of the, unless we were deeper. Than the,
Well, that's what we're thinking,
Will
it'd
be
be
quite a
deeper.
bit deeper.
Yeah, it'd be quite a bit deeper than the existing basement. But totally doable and
if we're excavating in rock, that may not be a question.
It may not be a question, absolutely. But, you know, even if we did this, you could, you know, we could make a much bigger connection over. I mean, we're showing that basically as the connection
Oh, I see.
to it, right
Sure,
there.
Sure, okay.
I think this one's really interesting. I think of the Portland Art Museum,
Mhm.
and one of the things I absolutely cannot stand about that museum. I know
Is getting to the
My husband's an
Masonic-
artist. I've been to a lot of art
I
museums.
can't
I
figure
cannot
out.
stand that logistics
Of going under.
down and then going up to the
Yeah.
modern wing. And I think it's just it really
That's
it does
It's a good
something to
example.
you
Mhm.
viscerally. You know what I mean? It
well,
really,
not only, and then you get over to the new edition,
And then
and
you
that
go,
thing is so wacky.
It is.
I mean, it's
You
so
just don't know
wacky.
where you are when you're there.
You don't.
This would be a lot clearer. But yes,
All right.
you're absolutely right, though. You're still doing levels, but this would be greatly
Right.
simplified over
If we
the
did
Portland Art
this,
Museum.
this would be a real famous library
Yeah.
area.
It would be.
And something for the city to be
You know?
really
Very
proud
famous.
of, I think.
I think so.
Create more
I think
traffic.
it's
I think the
it's a
only problem
bold
is-
statement, you know, it really,
The
it's,
real problem is you can't point to it because it's not there.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that, I don't know, I really like it. If you
Interesting.
somehow, there'd have to be lots of light for
Yeah.
staff as well as patrons.
yeah.
To be able to work in.
Well, I mean, this is
really
like,
the look of it, and I like
it's
the
bold.
idea of
It's a
it.
bold statement.
It is. I like it.
Well, I wonder what the,
Another
so
underground.
the city councilors, I guess, you know, what they would
Mhm.
think, because I think it'd be pretty exciting to do something really interesting.
Mhm. Well, our thought was that we would share this with everyone and let's see, you know,
Right.
and see how it boils down in our, you know, after we go through this process, we want to be able to say, well, we're doing it because we know the others presented these pros and cons, this made more sense, and versus just bringing something forward and saying, well, we think this is the best thing.
The
Yeah.
underground certainly saves the park.
It saves
Yeah.
the park.
Can't think of
No, it's
anything
an
else other
important
than
thing.
just to float it like big balloons above. So great feedback. Our next step is going to be to go to the McLaughlin neighborhood next week. Next Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday? I think it's
Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday?
Oh, you're not
26th.
doing the city commission this week?
We are
No,
not.
we pulled it.
Oh, okay.
Remember,
And-
that was the email you responded to.
Yes.
We thought about it and really felt it would be better to be able to do this with the city commission in a workshop
Okay.
session versus doing it at a public hearing.
Yeah.
Because you know we're not going to have the time, and it's hard to rush through this without getting a chance to talk about it. So the only question that we also had scheduled to meet with the Historic Review Board next week as well, and we're debating whether or not it's worth going to them at this point until we get this refined more, and you know we've got the direction with it. So that's the only thing we've been debating.
I think that if we go to them at all, it's simply like I show up and give them a report of what's going on, or I write them a report. But I think we could ask Christina. This is like way too much to go through.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. This would be our last one. They basically booted us out. It was-
Yeah, they
it
said
was
you've got
about-
10 minutes, and
yeah.
we're not going to give you any feedback.
Yeah.
Really.
So that's the only reason I was thinking, Charlie, back to your point of, let's wait until we've got something more concrete to share with them.
You know, the goal here, I guess, after this whole set of meetings, is to select an option and start to develop it.
Mhm.
So, we need to do that we need to engage the Historic Review Board and get some kind of comment. The question is only, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah.
I would
Well, I
defer
think you
to
could talk
those
with the
of you who
staff
know.
and see what they think.
Want me to talk
But
to
I'm just
Christina?
even thinking, you know, I mean, to go through this, you know, we need time. I don't know if they'll even give us enough time to do it.
Well, the other thing to do is sort of a hybrid of what Mo was suggesting, which is maybe you do show it to them, but you go bing, bang, boom, 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 and this is what we're doing, and here's our report, and so long. You know, not try and make it into a discussion or a
Mhm.
workshop with them,
Mhm.
but just here's what we're showing everybody else real quickly, 10 minutes, and they get their shot at all of this when
Right.
We sure do. Later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
later when we submit for a,
There you go.
Okay. Well, we can continue the discussion. We got to decide by tomorrow if we're going to pull it or not, right? The 19th.
So let's talk
Cool.
tomorrow about that.
Okay, so thank you for your time. And hopefully that was
Thanks.
enjoyable and
Really, really nice.
but there's so many exciting possibilities, you know. It's like I really feel like we can't go wrong with any of them. It's a matter of what is ultimately the best of those.
I agree. They all look great. We can make any of them work.
Okay.
Even the boring one.
Even boring.
I liked the comment. Well, I think that would be acceptable.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, that's not very cool.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
You guys.
Yeah, now we have to do the boring stuff now, actually. Thanks so much. We'll be in touch tomorrow.
Yeah, so we
Thank
can
you.
discuss tomorrow and then decide if we want to
So
continue.
Mo,
I mean, I'm happy to do it either way. I just,
DA suggests that because the other stuff's in writing, do we want to rush through or do we want to adjourn?
I don't think there's really anything that
There's
we need
not
to.
much. Okay.
I mean, you guys have already read all the reports,
Yes.
so I don't think I need to verbally deliver it.
Is that okay?
Yeah, are you kidding
Okay.
me? And the building update, you know what's going on.
Yes.
And so I think we just,
Next meeting.
we can jump right straight to September 10th is the next meeting. That will be the day after we have the work session with the city commission. So that will be actually really good
Timing, perfect.
Yeah, and then the open house is the 4th, September 4th at the library. And so that might be an interesting place if people have time to show up, 5 to 7.
Okay.
And then we have another McLaughlin Neighborhood Association meeting that same night at 7.
I've never ever been to one, and I live in the neighborhood.
You should go. Oh my God, that would be great.
When is it?
September 4th. Bye. Good
Bye.
night, you guys.
Thank you.
September 4th at 7.
Which
So
day of
we
the
will
week
be
it
hitting
is?
them twice, on the 26th and the
Okay.
4th.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And I think that's a very good intersection
What
with
day of the
them.
week is that? Thursday. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the schedule, and with that, I think. You'll send that out, right? Yeah, I think I have,
Okay.
but yeah.
So can I adjourn?
Adjourn?
Okay. A second. All in favor. Meeting is adjourned at 7.